So World War II is over. Hurrah. But we're going to jump right into the Cold War. So let's recap really quickly what World War II was, what the outcomes were, and how it's going to set up the next 50 years of American history. Well, first of all, there's 50 million civilian deaths coming from World War II. The vast majority of that is coming from two places. One, the Holocaust, 12 million civilian deaths completely created just by that. And two, another 12 million or so deaths from the invasion and occupation of the Soviet Union. So there's a huge chunk of deaths that are coming from those two places. And there's going to be 22 million combatant deaths as a result of World War II. This is one of the most, I believe it is actually the most bloody war in the history. And 450,000 American deaths makes it the most costly war in American history as well. Those are combatants and non-combatants. Almost all of those were over in Europe. 450,000 Americans died there, either Europe or the Pacific. But to put that in perspective, it's a 1 to 59 ratio between U.S. deaths and Soviet deaths. About 24 million Soviets are going to die as a result of World War II. They call it the Great Patriotic War because of all the deaths. This is going to cause a huge amount of distrust between the United States and the Soviet Union. If you remember, the Soviet Union was calling for that second front very early on in the war, and it took a couple of years for the United States and Britain to open that second front. The massive amount of production coming from the United States, that massive amount of investment from the government into production is also going to contribute to that distrust, because the United States and the Soviet Union are going to have a fundamental ideological difference between communism and capitalism. And the massive production that's coming out of the United States is only going to continue after the war. There's an economic boom that's created by what's referred to as the military-industrial complex. The United States doesn't stop producing weapons because we're going to enter right into the Cold War, and all of those weapons investments are going to trickle their way into the commercial sector. So when they build a new airplane, like a warplane, that technology is then going to be trickling into the commercial sector. Plastic was developed for the military. It's going to trickle into the commercial sector. Computers built for the military, going to trickle into the commercial sector. So the military-industrial complex and the massive expansion of the federal government and the investment that the federal government makes in both creating items as well as hiring people is going to contribute to what's referred to as the long economic boom. From the 1950 to about 1970, that 20-year period, the economy grows at a rate that has never before and never been seen in history. This long economic boom is partially helped by the massive amount of federal investment in the economy. And because of that, the capitalist United States is going to feud with the communist Soviet Union, and the Soviets are going to see that expansion and that success and production as a threat to their way of life, and the United States sees communism as a threat to its way of life. And we have this distrust. And the way that they broke down the map with East and West Germany and East and West Berlin is going to cause early conflicts to emerge between those two countries that leads to this Cold War, which we'll talk about more later. Another important thing, the United States has taken responsibility as a world power. The United States is not returning back to isolationism. It's going to be a leader in the world, and it's going to be a leader in the world in fighting communism, and that's going to have its pluses and minuses, and that's what the Cold War is all about.